Earl Grey.
Oh. Welcome to the Picard Maneuver. We are live and on Skype. And we just saw episode 9 of Star Trek Picard, Et in Arcadia Ego, part 1. And my name is Tim.
I'm lagging Joel, probably lagging a bit, but I'm still Joel.
We'll see how that goes. Yeah, so you're on Skype on my computer and I'm streaming from my Mac, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm monitoring the stream through my YouTube, and you look like you're moving fairly fluidly. I'm kind of a little bit robotic. Maybe I'm a synth. I don't know. How are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you pretty good. I don't know if that means how well they're hearing you, but we'll see how it goes. Like I said, when we switch over to the screenshots, you might be doing better.
Not true. Well, let me know. Let us know in the comments below.
Yeah, I can monitor feedback if there is feedback.
For sure. Just a quick explanation. We decided that we would do this through Skype this time, not because of the global situation, but because Tim and I had a little bit of an argument, and I said, you know what, buddy, I don't want to be near you right now. So there we go. But I still like him enough to do this through Skype. I hope everyone's staying safe, staying at a distance from each other, washing your hands a lot, if we're being serious. And
do the curves.
And stay focused on the positive stuff, like your favorite or a friend that you want to be near.
All right, so what did we think of this new episode?
I never really know how to answer right off the get-go because I'm still processing it. Mm-hmm. There was a lot going on. Mm-hmm. A lot going on. I didn't dislike it, I guess, but it definitely presented some problems with it, I think.
I'm going to be honest. I rather disliked this episode. I thought it had a lot of problems, more problems than it didn't have. I've had a few points that kind of annoyed me. So,
good, you're being honest.
I think it's problematic, and I don't see the sort of payoff that I was really hoping could, save save Picard the show and save Picard the Picard.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm just sending a little message on the chat in case anyone wants to talk. I don't think anyone's watching right now, but oops, I closed my YouTube. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. There was a lot of problems. I don't know. I think there was a few reasons for talking about those. Once we get into this, You may have we haven't really discussed the episode together yet, so this is going to be interesting because
normally we watch it together and sort of have reactions live with each other as we're watching it, and then we sort of know what we're going to talk about. So that's going to be interesting. I got some good screenshots, so we'll just go pretty in depth. And I mean, there's a couple things I sort of liked from the episode. Good to see Brent Spiner, etc., etc. All right, so let's get right into the screenshots and see how that goes. So you're seeing this too. You're seeing the screenshot. Oh yeah, the first screenshot isn't a screenshot. It's a painting shot. That is the title of the episode. So the title of the episode, Et in Arcadia Ego, refers to this painting as 17th century French painting by Nicolas Poussin. It represents, so in Greek mythology, Arcadia is one of the utopias. It's sort of the picture like, shepherds and Pan with his flute, and that type of utopia. And in this painting, you got a couple shepherds, and this is sort of from Greek tradition too. They're inventing art by they see one of them sees their shadow on the side of it's supposed to be a cemetery, a gravestone of some sort, and for the first time sort of traces a shadow, and sort of there's artifice, um, techne, out of the symbol of death, which sort of touches on some of the themes we've gotten from the show in the first season here. Yeah, which is another theme. Oh, I can play
So
Joshua.
I don't know. I guess sure. That's why that painting was the inspiration for the episode.
And I was
Good.
I was reading the Argo about Argo and the Argonauts recently, this Greek mythology stuff, and in it I noticed there's a city that he goes to when he goes to get the Golden Fleece, and the city's called Iaea, I-A-I-A, the name of the planet from the previous episode where they have the admonition on.
Oh, okay.
But I don't see any actual connection between the mythological place. It's sort of like the point in the journey where they finally get the fleece, but then they gotta go back. So I don't know. It's kind of like the Fenris Rangers. There's been tons of mythological references and names from mythology and all this stuff in Picard, but none of it's really paid off or sort of made sense to me. I mean, you know me.
Yeah, I know you. It's just more of hey, let's look up some mythology and use use names and ideas, but not necessarily connect it to our story. It doesn't seem super connected to everything that's going on. So let's get past that. The title is a painting.
Yeah. So right into the episode. Um, yeah, so they've just gotten out of the Borg transwarp gateway, and they see the planet, and they're all like psyched about seeing the planet, and they think they're a day or two ahead of the Romulans coming.
System. Um, there's also a moment where they say, "What happened to Deep Space 12?" Because that's where they were supposed to be going.
That's
And
what
it's like,
Agnes is, because she's sort of just like been in her room for all of the last few scenes of the last episode, so she didn't even know
yeah,
about the transwarp gateway.
yeah. Well, am I out of jail now, or am I like whatever? It's like I guess because nobody cares anymore that you killed Maddox, and I still don't understand that. But so yeah, the Peleus. Did you mention that?
No, that's an interesting
So
name.
and then like Narek is still following them, and he's like shooting at them, and then he tricks them.
Yeah, so when Narek starts attacking, I noticed something I didn't notice before. They all have seatbelts. He like says, activate straps, and everyone has a seatbelt, which I don't think they did in the previous fight scene, the one where 7-9 shows up. Yeah, but it was always sort of like the ongoing joke of how they, on the Enterprise bridge, they never have seatbelts, so they're always got to like rock around, like.
Yeah.
I think you may be
Anyway, I
right
mean,
there.
this ship. Don't have good inertial dampeners.
Yeah,
Inertial dampeners and spent it on a paint job is what I'm trying to say.
makes sense.
Um,
So, yeah, as you were saying, Narek's attacking. He came out of the transwarp gateway. Yeah, that's basically it. I'm sorry. Um, but then just when things look bad, the cavalry shows up. Not really. Um, a Borg cube shows up. Doesn't really help though, but it looks cool. And no, I actually really like this, and I think we've encountered some interesting cultures and planets and species who have defense. Sometimes, there was that Edo god that was in and around the planet, and there's been a bunch of things like that. And this is sort of an interesting twist on sort of the protector things for the planet. Um, it looked pretty cool. Um, the,
Self-sacrifice that the flowers do.
yeah, I
Um,
mean, I assume they're defensive, but they seem to more or less bring them to the planet safely. Now, and that's the end of the space battle, and then everything happens on the planet. I just wanted to
yeah,
say, just about the way the space battle was done, it none of it seemed really that important. None of it seemed to matter. So the whole scene could have worked the same if Narek wasn't there.
yeah.
The La Serena could have just come out of the transwarp gateway, gone up to the planet, then been attacked by the orchids and taken down to the planet. Same with the Borg cube. Could have been there, could have not been there. Didn't seem to matter. Just all those characters needed to be there, so they showed up.
I agree. Yeah, I think it was kind of a waste of weird battle that didn't have a point. So, like, yeah, I think they could have just shown up, gone down to the planet. It would have almost been. You could still see that Narek was like tailing them, and then they go down to the planet, and then they just end up capturing him here.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't really matter that they had this weird battle. Um, so they go to the planet.
Yeah, she's the doctor now, apparently. If someone's sick, so Picard was sick in the previous scene, uh, she's there with the medical tricorder being the doctor now. And the last time she was being the doctor, she killed the guy. But even this, the whole point of this is that it reminds everyone, the audience, oh yeah, Picard's sick. And for that to happen, she had to be sick. Agnes had to scan her with the medical tricorder, say, oh, you're sick. And then because it's Agnes, she's the one who was most likely just to go tell everybody or force him to go tell everybody. Yeah, his words exactly. Because I'm still trying to figure out what the relationship with the condition is with the condition he had in All Good Things, which I think is a different one, but kind of the same. And he says brain abnormality, terminative, no effective treatment, which is actually overstating the problem versus the way his the doctor and his friend from the Stargazer had told him in the second episode. At the yeah, and originally the doctor sort of told him one of the possibilities is that it's terminal. Now, I don't know if that dynamic was it was his friend and his doctor, so that's how he words it, but you could tell from his eyes and the way they were acting in the scene that it really was a terminal. I think that may be even the implication, but he definitely states it quite like I'm dying.
So I don't know. We'll have to see what happens there, or whether they. I don't think they'll talk about it again this season.
I actually disagree. I have a theory. It'll come up again later in the episode.
It was all his dream.
It was all a dream. No. I think that just meant it had the exact same gravity as Earth, right? Because a smaller planet would have less gravity unless it was denser.
Okay, so that's how they're explaining that off.
Which
okay,
is pretty
cool.
normal on Star Trek.
Well, usually, I guess what I was going to say is that even just bringing that up then makes you think about it. So it's almost better to just not bring it up. So maybe just say it's an Earth planet and there's don't worry about
along
gravity.
those exact lines, two people in this scene and the next scene bring up being attacked by homicidal fungi. And then was sort of like, are we going to see homicidal fungi in this episode? We don't. But it reminded me of, remember back in like the second episode, we hear the Romulans make this big deal about if you see a green light, run.
Yeah.
Never happened. We were all like, that's going to happen.
Never
it could, maybe some version of that still happened, but it doesn't seem like what we thought.
Way for the, I mean, it almost seemed like this was a joke. It was like a throwaway where Raffi's just like, take a gun because you never know what kind of weird thing will attack you. Ha ha ha. Yeah. But like, it's true. You don't know what could attack you. Like,
Flower just attacked them. That was the joke, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So then they decide instead of don't have a lot of time to warn the synths, and they don't have a lot of time to prepare for the Romulans to attack. But they decide to divert and go to the Borg cube first, which in the episode it doesn't take them long, but in reality that would have been a pretty long
and they were like
journey.
One day maybe Romulans show up, so wasting 4 or 5 hours is a big deal. And
just to kind of check on Elnor and Hugh.
And none of that really, I mean, it mattered for the audience, but it didn't matter for the plot of the episode whatsoever. After the Borg cube, everyone forgets about the Borg cube completely.
Except for, well, we won't go there, I guess.
Runs towards it at one point. We'll talk about it.
Yeah. You can say, you're staying here, Elnor. And it's like, he should go with Picard to protect Picard. Like that's if and you know
we
why?
Know why by the end of the episode.
Yeah, if Elnor had been there, a lot of things wouldn't have happened. But anyway, okay.
It's problematic. Although I actually think it's kind of cool to have a Borg cube on a planet this way, though. I thought it was kind of a cool visual. When they go to it in this sort of next scene, it sort of feels like they're going into like the archives or no, I was gonna say going into like I don't know, like an Indiana Jones scene or something.
Into the cube, and we see 7 of 9. She's like kicking dead Borg bodies off of a ledge.
Oh, so that's her. Yeah, and at this point, it's still a little unclear how many Borg survived or what percentage of the Borg or what exactly is going on in the cube. Anyway, the key thing out of this is Picard and Seven have a talk. Presumably, just before this, Elnor told Picard what happened to Hugh. And there's a line where Picard says that he couldn't believe that Hugh, what could turn such a gentle soul to violence. And that's the line in this scene. And to be honest, I was sort of like, what are they talking about? What violence? He saw
Yeah, I
the
didn't know what
Romulans started executing a bunch of his Borg friends, and he was like, maybe the Romulans aren't good at and shouldn't be here anymore. That was like, it wasn't like he did any sort of violence. We didn't have the chance. So I was sort of annoyed by that throwaway because it felt like that line was going to the end of the Hugh story. That he was a gentle soul but turned to violence.
So I guess they're trying to. It's like, well, he's dead, so it makes sense, and he shouldn't have, or something. I don't know. Yeah, I didn't understand that line at all because I was trying to figure out what's Picard talking about. When did he turn to violence? I didn't really see him be very violent. He said he wanted to protect the ex-Borg, and then was mad at the Romulans, and then what's her name? Narissa showed up and killed him.
Yeah, and she was like, finally, I tricked you into saying you don't like Romulans.
I guess because he had a violent death, that's what Picard means.
I don't know. But I fear that's the end of Hugh. That's a lot. So they're scared. And so then they leave the Borg cube and they go see the synth, the android city.
Think of this. She looks at pictures of her and her sister, Dodge.
Oh, I don't have screenshots.
And it looks like they're young in the
picture. Oh,
pictures.
I said, yeah, I don't have the screenshots. Oh, I didn't notice that.
Right. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought I saw them and they looked like children, and I was like, so what? The mixed signal.
I think I remember the shot of them in the same image, like the same photograph. But I think it was similar to the one she tore. I didn't think they looked that much younger.
Okay, well maybe I don't know, but I thought I saw like photos of them as children, so I'm thinking like, were they ever since like 3 years old? Anyway, so then they go to let's go to the shot there when they go to. Just drinking my tea here. So they go and what is?
I didn't know anything like that.
No, I didn't write anything down.
It reminded me a lot of, remember on Descent Part 1 and 2, they also go through a transwarp gateway and see the lore and X-Borg planet. It had, to me, sort of similar architecture, at least from this angle, with sort of the silo-y buildings and the tall, like, I don't know what it is. It looks like California modern 60s kind of architecture. Yeah, they all look either very Greek to me or a little like Buddhist monks. A few of them have that sort of orange Buddhist monk's robe doing Tai Chi. Yeah, there's some of the the Greekish comfortable clothing.
And I guess in this case they are very casual. They just kind of hang out with loose-fitting clothing in the sun and
Tai Chi,
enjoy their
chess. A lot of them were exercising, which Data never did.
They're all in good shape. That makes sense because they're synths, so I guess that makes sense.
Exercising?
No, that they're all in really good shape.
Yeah, because it's not like that would ever change.
Right.
I don't know.
So that's
It
good.
is sort of an interesting. What would that type of planet be? It's not the first planet in Star Trek where it's like in a planet of androids or like a planet of naive, utopia-esque planet that we've encountered. So it sort of felt like a lot of planets we've seen on Star Trek. There's DS9 episode where it was like a utopia planet, but then we find out everyone's a hologram and things like that. Yeah, some seem to have the Goldian metallical a little more. Sorry, I keep echoing a little bit in my ear. That's why I talk funny whenever I say a longer word. But yeah, it seemed a little bit more like Data. And I think the implication too with Jorah and Sutra, the sort of older versions of Daj and Soji, is that the ones that were made years ago sort of had more like Data's metallic skin, golden eyes features. So there's like versions of them over the years.
Development. So this particular synth recognizes Picard, and we.
Oh yeah.
It seemed a little. I don't know. She's trying to
Patronizing.
like she's. Yeah, like it was almost awkward when she's touching his face, and I was like, "Don't touch Picard like that. It's weird."
And not only that, we learn very quickly that it's not like they've never seen an old guy before. But I did want to touch on
Right.
something you just said, just that the idea of the different sequential versions of androids that go sort of from Data, metallic skin, blue yellow eyes to like very human. There was definitely like a shades, degrees of that, which sort of contradicts the whole like singular breakthrough of the what were they talking? I forget what Agnes said in the
Oh,
first episode.
yeah, the neuronic cloning.
Yeah, the fractal
Yeah,
positronic
neuronic.
neuronic something. Yeah, that seems to contradict what we see. Like that isn't how they're working out. But
Because we predicted that maybe on the planet they would all look like Daj and Soji, or at least they'd all be in pairs, or something that would show that the progress of this breakthrough.
or
But yeah, no, it doesn't seem.
instead of showing the gradual progress, more showing instantaneous progress because that's how it was described. As soon as you figure out this technology, it happened. But I'm not sure. It did seem like there was a lot of twins.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So there you go.
Oh, you anything else to say?
About that, not really. I think.
Well, before that, Soji does announce to everyone the Romulans are coming. And everyone's concerned about that, of course. But they're all sort of super naive and utopian, like children, you know what I mean? Yeah, this is a random shot. But then someone shows up.
Presented this. I certainly was hoping to see Brent Spiner again, but this threw me off. So this is. So as soon as I saw him, I was like, well, okay, who is he? What are we seeing right now? Because it was like an old Brent Spiner, which is him now. But I was like, okay, this isn't Data or an aged version of Android, not like something that Soong made. And Noonien Soong's son, Dr. Alton Indigo Soong, and he calls himself a mad scientist. and he says this, I'm like Data if he had gotten old and soft, which I don't really know what that means.
Yeah, so we did actually talk a lot about this. Remember about what we wanted to see, and very early on, right after the first episode, I think we had this theory about Data showing up as sort of a father figure, and maybe even just the Brent Spiner human version of him as the holographic father from like the arm of one of the androids. And that sort of,
Yeah,
in some aspects of that felt, I don't like how they handled this character. We'll talk a little bit about it in the next scenes. But
yeah,
I don't know. I feel like oh, I'm Soong's son. He had a son. I was born the same time as Data. Was a very good explanation. It
yeah.
didn't I feel like the holographic version would have made more sense and would have worked better. Although obviously
Yeah.
it doesn't versus some stuff later on that it comes up. But I wasn't buying it. Presumably Juliana Tanner's son, but then why didn't she mention it? That's weird.
Why didn't she mention it? Why didn't like Soong mention it when he brought Data and Lore home and talked to them about that he was dying and he wanted to see them again? Why didn't he say, I also wanted to have my biological son here too, or he couldn't make it? Or he also, the other thing I guess is that he looks exactly like
Yeah.
Noonien Soong. Like it's
Just like Noonien Soong's
one,
grandfather or great grandfather, Eric Soong from Enterprise.
yeah. So I guess if you give any excuse for Brent Spiner to be on the show, sure, I'll take it. I'll be very forgiving of it. But you're right. I would have preferred if his appearance was in some form of a Data hologram. Because to be honest, I like Data when I like Brent Spiner almost better when he plays just these kind of like weird, I shouldn't say weird, but kind of like aloof characters that are just kind of like, hey, I'm a mad scientist. Oh, like I'm eccentric.
Yeah.
I love him.
I like him as
I just
mad
love
science too. Obviously, I like him as Data.
Yeah. Prefer to see him as either a hologram or like a duplicate
Right. Oh,
synth
this
that
is what I was
maybe
going to
is
say.
like,
Just that it's possible that he was the illegitimate son of Soong, and while he was still trying to like keep his marriage together with Juliana, so that's why we didn't know about him, and maybe he wasn't
I'll take
part of his
that.
life later on. But at the same time, we learned quickly that he's a foremost android mad scientist guy, and obviously he knew Maddox, and Maddox knew him. So why wouldn't Data have known him years ago? Just in the scientific android community. If he wanted to work on Android as a mad scientist, shouldn't he be talking to Maddox and Data like 30 years ago?
Yeah. Just kind of glazed over all that stuff and just said, now here he is. This is who he is. Accept it and let's move on.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And there was sort of a moment between him and Picard, of course.
there's still an authority there that's like basically running things.
Well, the father
So like if he
figure.
wasn't there,
The father figure. He's replaced Maddox as the father figure.
yeah. So
In fact, before we suddenly saw Maddox in Space Vegas and then he suddenly died, this is exactly how I sort of pictured him showing up as like the father figure in the Android Utopia.
sure.
So, I mean, that seems to be probably why Maddox died, because they wanted Brent Spiner to be this character. Same reason Hugh died, because they wanted 7 of 9 to be the Borg Q character. Oh, sorry. I always cut you off when go.
No, I don't care. I don't need to be on camera because I think I'm like freezing up a little bit in this.
Yeah, I mean, you sound good to me, whereas I'm like that millisecond off, so I can't being able to hear myself. Anyway, go ahead. We'll figure it out as we do it more. Oh, we were done. So in the next scene, they're sort of like talking about what they're gonna do about the Romulans, and someone else shows up. There's the thing about when you come here is that one scene, a new person shows up. Next scene, another person shows up, and it's a very weirdly cut scene. It kind of goes back before with them talking, and then Picard sitting somewhere, and someone comes up, and then they both come up to the scene. Whoa, like it's a big deal. Um, but there was a line here I thought that was interesting. They sort of just talk about how they know the Romulans are coming. So presume I don't think it's a little bit off camera. I think she explains the whole backstory. But Spiner soon says you can't be expected to take. You can't be expected to keep a secret you don't even know you know. Yeah, which is 100% reasonable and sort of underscores like the absurdity of the whole Maddox's plan. And the other line he says, "I warned him, Maddox, that his plan might draw unwanted attention." In my head, I mean, I'm still not convinced at all about the motivation of Maddox and what's going on here at all. Anyway, but that's go ahead. Next scene, or well, it's the same scene, but yeah, but someone comes up first. It's Sutra. So Jorah was the one that Rios met, like what was it, 9 years ago? Jonna, yeah, sorry, John. I bad right. And so this is her twin. So presumably Jonna was all gold and stuff. We couldn't tell from like the pencil sketch. Yeah, you mentioned that if someone was like that. Although, I think we've seen other aliens that sort of look like that anyway. Data fractal cloning. Sorry, you cut out a little bit there. Yeah, so we finally get the full picture of the admonition and the payoff. Apparently, androids can do mind melts.
Apparently, she's been. Apparently,
Although,
I never been on live TV.
remember, Data could do the Vulcan nerve pinch, but that was a lot more believable than android
Well,
mind melts. Katra to Katra.
well, yeah, I don't know. I thought when that be like I saw it coming because she was like, I think maybe this message is meant for synths. If so, oh, how are we going to get the message? Well, and then that's when Brent Spiner comes in and is like, ah, yes, good thought, Sutra. You have been studying the Vulcan
Mind melt, yeah.
tradition.
No, fair enough. I, I mean, honestly, my problem isn't as much with Andrew doing the mind meld as the other stuff. So we'll get into that. But before that, I just wanted to point out, you could tell right away that she was evil because of her like weird the way she acted. Like she acted a lot like Narissa and Bejazzled and a little like handsy like Commodore O. There's definitely a way. woman villains are portrayed on this show. That to me is a little problematic. We might talk about that. Yeah, we might talk about that again, see where that goes. Yeah, I brought. So I didn't do exhaustive screenshots like I have the previous two times. Most of it's the stuff we've seen before and just sort of complete. And but yeah, I thought that was an interesting shot with the Starfleet thing. And they ultimately explain it. So why don't we do? Do you want to go over the explanation? There's two things to do here: the explanation that is portrayed, and then talk about it, what that means. Do you want to explain it? Well, they just so the imagery was life being created, then life dying, and then like the creation of man, the creation of androids. So there's this. So what this is that so this is a message that's coming from this sort of sense that are coming from beyond the boundaries of time and space. We stand, an alliance of synthetic life, watching you, waiting for your signal. Summon us, and we will come. You will have our protection. And they're talking. They're going to protect synths who are sort of being attacked by non-synthetics, by regular life. We'll have your protection. Your evolution will be their regular humanoid extinction. That's the message. So it's actually quite simple. It's like it's not as complicated as we thought. We got most of it last episode, but I feel like it ended up just being it's a message, it's a beacon left for Android life could find and then say, oh, there's a cycle, the assumption, a cycle of Android life being created, and then humans killing that life that they've created, and that these super powerful, highly evolved synthetic life that's sort of outside of time and space can come in and just eradicate all regular life and save them. So that's sort of the message that's
Yeah, like
going.
it's like
So that is sort of a scary
regard
thing.
for
It
like
does roughly touch on like Greek mythology with like the Titans and then the the other gods, the Olympians, and then the cycles of destruction and things like that. And same thing as with Norse mythology. So I think we might do an episode actually talking about the mythology of it. I don't know if that's really what's interesting to me. I'm thinking more about. I don't like how they told us this story. I found it really confusing. I feel like that the whole argument, it's a beacon that Synths could use to basically phone up aliens who would destroy all life in the galaxy. That's a scary thing. That would make you want to not do it. They should have just explained that initially instead of revealing it to us the way they did in these weird steps. These weird sort of getting around, first seeing clips of it, not understanding Agnes's motivation, then seeing it actually happening, but not really understanding what's going on, and then the way they've done in the last few episodes. I feel like they should have just showed it to us from the start, like this, and then it would have at least made sense. That then poses a real problem of, is this actually what all the admonition is? Is actually what all the Romulan Vatvash experience, and actually what Agnes experienced?
I thought that immediately after Sutra sees this, I thought, is this what everyone saw? And if it is, it doesn't add up as far as this is what made everything happen. This is what made I mean, my first thought was, this is what made her kill Maddox?
Well, that's the problem I was going to
Um,
get to with my little spiel there, is that even if this is what Agnes experienced, and so she understands the problem, you keep working on androids, eventually somehow the androids will know about this beacon and then phone up and kill all life. That's a reason why she'd stop working on androids and support the ban. It's not a reason why she'd kill Maddox at all,
no,
particularly not washed up
no.
Maddox, nowhere near any other androids.
Yeah. No, and she kind of described it like she was seeing hell. I wouldn't compare this to hell. I would compare it to, if this is the evolution, this is what could happen if synths are threatened, which I also don't understand from the perspective of the Romulans and the Zhat Vash, that they should realize that they are, by trying to kill synths and ban synths, they're doing exactly what would bring forth synths' fear of contacting this guardian force that comes and kills all bio life. Like, if you could live peacefully with synths and AI, this would never happen. That you wouldn't have to worry about it, because this is all about protection, AI protecting itself. This isn't some weird destructive force that comes for no reason. This isn't hell on earth or hell.
Well,
this is just...
And more than that, if you take the synth equation out of it, so it's just a beacon on a planet saying, hey, create, because they had this sort of this, it looked like the how to create this radio beyond time and space, whatever, phone, ET phone system, whatever, like we saw it, or we were even talked about in the previous episode. But so if that was all there without the sense, and it was just a beacon saying, create this, call us, and we'll destroy all life in this galaxy. We know about this galaxy previously, but sometime in the future, this alien race, this powerful, highly evolved aliens will come back when you call us, destroy everything. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's sort of an interesting problem, but it's like, why if the Romulans just did that and called them, even if the synths weren't there yet, would they still come and kill all life? Did it have to be synths that would call them?
Right. And also, if this kind of super intelligent species, like this AI, can kind of see everything, can kind of what's going on, why do they need the sense? Couldn't they just sense if they're in danger and protect them? Also, like, it still doesn't explain the race that somehow assembled 8 suns together to warn people.
I assume that's the highly evolved AI that did that. But and from the Vash perspective, instead of outlawing sense, they should just destroy the beacon, right?
Yeah, you'd think so, eh?
I guess.
I don't know. There's a lot of... I think this is what I realized. At a certain moment watching it, I realized what they've tried to do with this first season. I feel like maybe they bit off more than they can chew to a certain degree. They probably thought these are all awesome ideas, awesome things to kind of deal with, but it's a lot. It's a lot to explain. And as soon as it really is like opening a can of worms, right? As soon as you start dealing with, past history, races being influenced by visions that then can be shared. I don't know. It's such a complicated plot.
Yeah, but to be honest, I don't think it's too complicated. Like, the additions aren't too complicated for science fiction. I've dealt with science fiction that's way more had more going on, and as far as backstories and super intelligent, highly evolved androids from thousands of years ago, etc. The problem is it doesn't make any sense, and more fundamentally, it doesn't jive or work with the motivations of characters where I actually know and experience episode to episode.
Right. And that's kind of where it gets to maybe biting off more than they can chew. It's like, it's not so much conceptually, it's more how it's being executed. And and maybe it was just done too quickly, or the ideas were bigger than the ability to bring them to life. And that's kind of what I'm noticing. And I don't know. We'll see what happens in the next part 2. But I think nothing new is going to be revealed in part 2. It's just going to be a big battle, right?
I think that's really what I disliked the most about this episode. Is it felt very much like this is it. This is the explanation for all this stuff. This is why these characters act this way. This is why Maddox and Agnes, etc. We got nothing else, and that's it. But is it the driving force of all of season 1? Is it the climax that we're sort of about to experience? It's not, and we'll talk about that at the end of the episode. So here's a shot, one of the lines when they said, watching you, we saw this shot. So it's android eyes watching you. And then planet being destroyed at the end of the thing. And then, Sutra says, fascinating. So you can tell, she's evil. I just wanted to say quick, and we touched a little bit on this. A lot of the imagery with the Starfleet symbol and data and stuff, it only makes sense if it's not like literal images that the androids made for people to experience. If it's like you'd experience your own interpretation of the message from the beacon, from the admonition, right?
Well, yeah, we talked about that before. And why would we be seeing data if this was if these were images created by some race that doesn't really care about what the synth life looks like? They're just trying to send a message. So there's clearly.
And we're dwelling on this, but it's a big problem with the whole plot. Remember, the way the Vat-Vash react is they shoot themselves in the head or hit themselves with a rock until they die. They don't think, this is a bad thing, we need to outlaw, we need to deal with this rationally. So presumably there actually is something that makes them go crazy if you're not prepared to experience this sort of message, this admonition. And that's what happened to Ignis and Commodore O and Narissa, and why they act the way they do. Yeah.
Say anything about the destroyer. Where did that come from?
That's a very good point. Because when we first were introduced to the mythology and stuff with Romulan Ramda, remember there was that triangle with the Black Angel and the Light Angel, and there was the Creator and the Destroyer, and there was this whole mythology we thought was there. Who knows?
Yeah, so clearly that wasn't part of the message. I mean, and why the Romulans and the Vat-Vash decided to say, well, our mythology in there, we need to add that Daj and Soji, and even this level of AI, it doesn't connect in the right ways. That the Romulans somehow knew, okay, why did the Romulans worry so much about Daj and Soji when didn't Maddox send Daj and Soji to try to figure out what was going on, and yet weren't Daj and Soji supposed to be the kind of catalyst for them to blow up Mars, to start this war on synths and get them banned?
No, I don't think so. I think at this point, as far as we can tell, Daj and Soji weren't particularly special at all, and they weren't even special as far as Android technology or the fractal whatever. They just happen to be the latest models of androids that are a little bit more human than the previous models. That's it. Well, it's just they had their memories erased 3 years ago and were sent on these missions that didn't make a lick of sense in any way.
But isn't part of the idea that it's like a first contact? Part of it is that the AI will be contacted when synths get to this level of evolution, I guess.
Yeah, so they imply evolution. You even say your evolution will be their just extinction.
Right. So I guess what I'm saying is, yeah. So the Zhat Vash didn't know that since we're getting to this point, didn't care at all. They were just like, but yet it's G to know that the destroyer will come. Which they just arbitrarily give that title to Dodge and Soji? Were they ever like?
That was just
I'm still not.
Romulan Ramda. Romulan Ramda was crazy. Maybe it's just another plot point where they explained they were crazy. The problem is obviously the way it was portrayed in that episode back, episode 3 maybe, is that it was portrayed like it mattered. There was like it seemed like the entire point of the episode or the plot that was on the Borg cube at the time was learning about that.
Yeah, maybe that's why I'm kind of confused about it, because it seems like there's just so many things that were really important, and then they're not at all important. They're almost like skip over points that like we didn't need. Do you want to get back to the plot?
We went on a digression, but that's a big problem right now with the show. Yeah, she was fascinating, and then that scene's done, and there's sort of a scene where we learn a little bit more about Dr. Soong. There's a butterfly flying around. So first he does this sort of guilt trip thing to Agnes about how she killed Maddox, and he says this thing about you have to retribution or something. It reminded me of in Greek mythology. There's this sort of repeated theme cycle of someone killing either a family member or someone who is helps them by taking them into their house, and that's considered like killing certain people is considered like a crime against the gods, and then the gods hate you, so you have to go like Hercules, do some labors to sort of purify yourself. Anyway, he guilt trips her, and apparently without Maddox he needs her help to finish a little project. That. Which doesn't make any sense. To the point of Golem's, what he actually wants to do is download his brain into an android, which is a theme we've seen a lot. That's one of those things that people wonder about. Can work with androids. We've definitely seen that happen a few times on Star Trek. So a golem is. Remember, we were talking about that the other day. That was sort of a Jewish myth in Prague. Anyway, a golem isn't something where you download your brain into it, but he wants to escape death, which is a theme we've touched on in the show, by downloading his brain into an android. Right now?
Do something about or yeah, his audio is like super quiet. I don't know if you can somehow turn mine up, but keep yours.
I can.
Maybe I can change my input levels.
It's dangerous. I can do this sort of volume.
Try to louder.
I can add. I'll give you 5 decimals.
Okay. Let's see what that does. Hello, Steven. Tell me if this is better.
To me, it looks like you're maxing out tons.
Does it? On my end.
I mean,
much, but
let's try this.
Let's try this.
Let's try.
Oh, he said my volume went down a lot when the picture was up, so I guess it's better.
Oh. Let me just try something else.
Interesting. Learning as we go.
Talk. Anyway, so this is the shot. You look the same. Anyway, I will increase your volume with advanced setting with the settings on. Anyway, we'll give that a try. Back to this scene, and remember.
Just second. He said the old volume's better, so maybe go back to that. Because now he can't hear me at all with the picture he's saying.
Can you talk? Yeah, that's the problem. I think let's leave it like that. Your mono, that's the one thing. Maybe that's part of the problem. Anyway,
or
talk a little bit.
You just talk about the picture. Maybe when the picture's up, you just describe it.
Okay, let's try that. We'll see. Anyway, so I was just saying that this scene. Remember, this is like the day before the Romulans come up, so they're kind of getting around doing quite a lot in this sort of one day. But basically, what we get from Dr. Soong, where he is in his life, he's really just this old man who wants to escape death by creating an android to download his brain into. That's all we really get from this character at this point, which to me is a little bit of a disappointing thing to sort of deal with Soong or Soong's son or whatever. It's to me kind of an interesting character for Brent Spiner to play.
Yeah, I'm not hugely into that. Think Soong, like even when he brought Data and Lore to like see him, he was like completely fine with his own. I'm not saying his son would not struggle with this, but I would rather, I guess, if Brent Spiner is going to be playing a character, if he had a little more, his motivation was more around kind of advancing synths and protecting synths. I get that, and that's kind of part of what he's doing. And that happens in the episode where he's kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's kind of interested in bringing the synth protector to help, right?
Yeah,
he's not worried about.
We'll get to that scene where there's sort of a discussion about whether these androids are going to try that or not, and he's on the side of the androids. Which,
yeah,
I don't know, I just pictured, and even of Maddox in this role, the father figure, as being a lot more enlightened, or at least more like zen and okay with his life and death, and not really worried about this. And again, like I said, we've definitely seen this character many times on Star Trek, so it's not really that interesting. There's nothing really to explore here. The one thing that I was thinking, and because remember, at the start of this episode, they make a big deal about reminding everybody that Picard's dying. So there's already an old man who's dying, who was dying. They haven't introduced any idea about Soong actually having some sort of terminal illness. As far as the life expectation for a human at this time, particularly a Soong, he's got another like 50, 60 years at least to live. Because he's only old as Data is, because he said he was born the same time as Data, and I don't remember the exact years, but Data, as far as lifetime, when he was on the show, was actually pretty young, like I think like in his 20s or something. So him being afraid of death or dying soon doesn't really make as much sense as Picard. So maybe where they're going is Picard could be downloaded to another body. Not necessarily I like that idea or makes any sense, but
yeah, I don't think so. I think
it's just weird the way they set it up.
Yeah, they almost set it up because it was weird because we had just found out that well, we knew this already, but Picard just revealed to his crew he's dying. Then we go to this planet, and Spiner's character is like, I'm also scared, like I'm dying. Like it kind of seemed like maybe he was saying he had some kind of terminal illness as
But he
well,
definitely
and
didn't
he's like,
say
I
that.
want to. No, he didn't say that, but I thought he was
He
going
said
to.
something
I
along
thought
the
that's where he
lines of
went.
more. I've been working on this project to like download my brain into an Android, and more recently it's been something I've been more worried about. I forget the exact word you use, but it's like the
Oh,
threats
I bet
coming
I
in.
know why. Because all bio life is going to be destroyed, so he wants to survive as a synth.
Yeah, I mean that's something he just learned like 20 minutes before, but
Yeah, that's true. Well, it's certainly
yeah.
convenient then for him to now, being some synth version of himself, he can say, "Sure, come destroy all humanoid life,
All
and
humanoid life. I'm not humanoid life.
I'll
How's
just
that?
chill." I think cool. Um,
But I think that's it for that scene. Um, so the next scene, there's sort of a moment between here, Sutra and Soji, where they sort of talk about, hey, um, what are the cost benefits of calling this highly evolved AI to destroy all life in the galaxy? And they're kind of sort of considering it. To me, it's
yeah,
not an interest. I mean, it touches on an interesting idea, but it's just too absurd to be an interesting, like,
I think it could have been really interesting. I think the whole setup and everything that they're dealing with, there's a lot of really cool stuff to it. I love the idea of like, like this AI race that's somewhere out there in the universe that wants to protect AI and all this stuff. It's all very cool, but it seems so oversimplified or something. Something's going wrong. But yeah, so this
well,
scene
I
where it's
keep
like,
saying, you know me. What do I like? I like continental philosophy, Greek, neoclassical art, and science fiction about robots. Like this
yeah,
should be my
so this
my
should be
favorite thing ever, and
right
Star
up your
Trek.
alley. Yeah, this is like basically this is why you're more
Critical.
critical because you want it to be done really well because it's something you're very interested in, and that's fair.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. I'm not saying that's a reason to not criticize it. I think you should. So yeah, when they come up, you can just explain them, and then we'll discuss
Go
it
back.
after
Yeah.
you explain.
That's what's saying.
So yeah, I just think this debate of like we should call in the big guns because this is what's going on, and now we kind of have Soji as the character that's like
No.
empathetic with
Killing all
me.
life in the galaxy might be a bad thing.
But tell me this, sir. If these synths are created and somehow connected to data, why wouldn't his personality, who he was, have a little more influence on synth's act? Because data would never do this. Data would
Hmm.
never consider this. So it feels like they've thrown out also the concept of data having an influence here. I don't feel his influence on any of this, which
Yeah.
sucks because he was like some example of what an android could be.
Yeah, and I
Um,
want to talk more about
we
that
need,
maybe
we need
just as we get to the end of the episode. But I'm overall been disappointed with this whole portrayal of what the android utopia is.
yeah. So they talk about that.
So let's go to the next scene. Yeah, 'cause, we got what they're saying. So da da, this guy shows up. They've captured an Eric. So they bring him in. He's crash landed on the planet. They find him. Of course, they haven't found the Borg. Everyone's forgotten about the Borg. To me, actually, the Borg and the Borg cube coexisting and working with the androids would have been an interesting angle. But they found Narek. I think I got a couple more shots. Oh no, I don't. So we'll talk about. Is there anything? Nothing really to talk about. Narek shows up. There's more to talk about in the other
Except
scenes, right?
I would just quickly say that bald synths. So did they choose to not have hair? How that happen.
I know Data's hair doesn't grow unless he wants it to. I know. I think it's probably because they could find twins. They were kind of like, more robotic looking guys. Like they obviously are pretty muscular. I assumed that because they were extras, they're actual twins. There's this one. So Agnes gets around quite a lot in this one like few hours before the Romulans come up. But there's this scene which I think is important where they sort of touch on the romance and relationship between Agnes and Rios, which I guess is a thing.
Yeah. I haven't been a huge fan of, I feel like I'm saying this a lot, that I'm not a huge fan of stuff. I think it's not a big deal, but I haven't been a huge fan of Agnes and Rios's kind of budding relationship. Just even in light of her having just killed her ex-lover, and I know I keep bringing that up too, but maybe wait a little while before you start like getting into the dating scene again. I don't know. It just feels a little forced. I don't think there always needs to be a love interest. Again, this is kind of a writer's trope. It's like when people are writing, it's, well, do we have a love interest? No, we better have a love interest in there. You don't always need that.
I completely agree.
So,
and to be honest, remember that scene right after she killed Maddox where, remember I was making fun of it because it was like they were showing their emotions without saying it. So Rios was like, stop, say what you're feeling out loud. But actually that argument for like a distraction sort of made sense. But then that doesn't lead to a real relationship.
Maybe. But yeah, the fact that they seem to now be pursuing an actual relationship with each other or something. Also in the scene, we had Spot too. I mean, famously, Data had a cat named Spot. It was a great thing to have this cat interact with Data. He had some really memorable scenes.
Does it work if it's a synthetic cat, though?
I mean, that certainly changes the dynamic, which was that you had this android taking care of a real cat. So now you just, I feel like it's just kind of like, hey, here's Spot 2. Matter.
Yeah. And also, who made Spot 2? Did Maddox know Spot that well?
No, but the audience knows Spot. The audience made Spot 2.
Fair enough. Next scene. Oh, we have this super awkward scene for a couple reasons. So, Rios and Raffi are going back to the La Serena, so they'll be away for the last scene of the episode, to work on fixing the ship. Sort of makes sense, but there's sort of this weird scene when they go away. I get all of the screenshots. First, one of the androids, that first android they met, I don't remember if she had a name. Arcana? Yeah, I think her name was Arcana. But she gives her this really weird thing, and she's like, it fixes stuff. I think I have her shot. She's like, it fixes things. That's it. But then as they leave, Raffi's all like, well, obviously worried about hearing Picard is dying. But then there's this thing where she says, I love you, but you don't have to say it back. And then he's like, oh, I love you. See ya. So, what was going on there?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Okay, first, because I know I'm not talking during the photos now because I guess we can't hear me, but she hands him what looks to me like an ocarina. I noticed that. So, and the most absurd thing ever. I've never seen. What's with that? It fixes things. And then she's like, how? And she says, you have to use your imagination.
Why aren't the androids, okay, so right now, ostensibly, the initial plan is for all the androids to go on the La Serena and get out of there. Trip, maybe take the Transwarp Gateway, get the heck out of there. That makes sense. Now, and presumably they probably could all fit in the ship, because the ship actually is sort of bigger than it seems, because it has cargo room or something. We've talked about that. But so why aren't the androids immediately helping them fix La Serena shit? Why are they just giving them an ocarina?
Yeah, that fixes things. And so,
But go, just you two
my
fix the
theory
ship
on
by yourselves.
yeah, my theory on that is that it is an ocarina, and she's just messing with them. um, so so that was, I had an issue with that, and then so the love scene, that I love you, I love you. Here's the thing: if you're gonna have a scene that characters are being awkward in, it shouldn't also be super awkward to watch it. I think we should understand as a viewer that there's an awkwardness between characters, but it should play out in a way that makes sense. This scene was supposed to be awkward, but to watch it felt really awkward. And I actually almost felt like the actors were trying to understand their motivation for why, like, how do we play this? Because she says, I love you, but you don't need to say it back. And he kind of goes, oh, okay.
I don't. Which sounds like
Yeah,
I don't love you, which is an awkward thing to say.
Right. And then he kind of waits and he starts to walk away and he's like, oh, but I love you, and walks away. And like, I guess it just played so awkward that it was almost like cringeworthy to watch. It took away from, I think it was supposed to be a really touching moment, but it didn't end up being that way because.
So can we clarify? It's not
awkward.
Romantic?
I think it might be for.
Which one?
I'll let you figure that out with your imagination. I think Raffi loves Picard maybe less platonically, but I think it's mostly platonic. But a bit of like she's in love with Picard and has been, and that Picard is just like, well, I don't know, because the way he answered also didn't seem sincere. Like it seemed like he was just saying it because she said it and he felt bad for her. So he was just like, oh, I love you too. Goodbye.
Yeah, that makes sense from Raffi's perspective, and would actually sort of explain some of the ways she's acted, and then sort of like, but still been there, even though initially he's like, felt betrayed by him and etc. But
yeah. Anyway, it was awkward. It was weird. I don't think. Again, it's one of those scenes that like you could still get that across without that. It felt clunky. Like. Again, it felt like, because actors, you have to remember, they need to be directed and told kind of what their motivation is, why they're saying it, how do they really feel, because they're not really feeling these things. They're trying to portray characters that are feeling these things. Exactly. So in this moment, it's like, I love you, walk away. And that's what I felt. It didn't feel like it had a lot of depth between these two characters that they've known each other for a long time. I don't know. Right. I think we're hung up.
Yeah, that's the end of that scene. So there's a scene where Picard is trying to contact Starfleet and being like, "Hey, I thought there was a fleet coming or something. Come save us!" But I don't think it gets through. Is it being blocked by the Romulans? Are they too far away? Did you get any more out of that scene than I did?
I didn't get an answer to that question as far as like, was it being blocked? But I think it's another thing that has to happen with the plot, because if Starfleet,
they have this fleet back at Starbase or Deep Space 12.
Well, and if they responded right now and said, "Yeah, we're on the way, don't worry," where's the tension go? It's kind of like, yeah. So we still have to feel as an audience like, oh, they might not show up, and it might be Picard, a bunch of synths, and a few orchids against 100 and what was it, 238 or 138?
200 and some, like 15 or something ships, 208.
So to me, the fact, again, it's a bit of a trope to have the person saying, "Is the help coming? Is the help coming?"
I don't know if it got through, but then the cavalry shows up at the end. I finally saw Stagecoach. Remember I was talking about that movie? Anyway.
Oh. Another thing that we didn't deal with it, or maybe it hasn't happened yet. Oh, I don't think it's happened yet. Never mind.
Probably do. Next scene. Oh, So there's some Nerix in the brig, and I guess they're like, we've never had a capture before, but they have a brig for him, so presumably they were planning to have someone captured. And he talks to that Arcana one a little bit, but the more important, there's a moment between her and Soji, where Soji's just like, they sort of had a little bit of resolution to that sort of dynamic they've had, and he's like,
Did
I
they?
still kind of love you, and she's like, I sort of hate myself for pitying you,
Yeah.
is what it is.
I don't think it was one of the things in our one of our videos where we talked about predictions and things that we were hoping would not happen a certain way, and I was hoping that we wouldn't go with the whole Narek actually loves her,
I don't think
and
he does.
well, he said he does,
He lies.
and so did Picard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure, he lied. I don't know. I he was pretty ruthless with trying to have her killed, but then he was like, I did that because I thought you were going to kill me. And that's kind of like one of those end of a relationship. Like, why'd you break up with me? Well, because I thought you were going to break up with me. Not really a good excuse to try to kill somebody.
Yeah.
He's in prison. Yeah.
What's more interesting is who I still think is Arcana. There's a shot of her little hummingbird plastic thing. What's that called? Brooch. That's the word.
A brooch.
Her plastic brooch.
And he stares at it. So as soon as he did that, I was like,
Oh no. So the next scene, Picard. Oh, this is one of those scenes that scene cuts back and forth. Picard and Soji sort of have a talk. That's this is the one where they talk a little bit about ethics, and she's like talking about, is it okay to sacrifice for a greater good? I'll go back to last talk. It's okay to sacrifice for greater good. Take a life to save a life, and she asks these questions like, when is that okay? And she first frames it in terms of when Agnes killed Maddox, and Picard's like, did she think what she was doing was right, or simply did she believe she had no choice? Neither of those options make any sense. For Agnes in that moment, it's not like she didn't have a choice to kill Maddox at that time. Well, I see someone's talking to us.
Yeah, if you want to, I responded through a message point because we were kind of caught up in the awkwardness
Of Raffi and Picard's relationship.
Yeah, and they're saying that if it's supposed to be romantic, that maybe it's awkward, but that it's maybe a last goodbye. Even so, that would maybe make a little more sense because they don't know how to interact if this is a last goodbye. But we've seen there's last goodbyes have happened in cinema and television very often, and I've never seen one where it was so kind of emotional. And maybe that's, I guess, Picard doesn't really know how to handle the emotions of this moment, but
and this is sort of the broader problem for this episode and what's going on with this android planet. But part of the feeling is that sort of a Seven Samurai moment where they know that the bandits are going to come and attack the village, so they've got a short time to prepare, and there's sort of these moments, like the fireside discussion before the battle in the morning.
Yeah.
But that isn't really what that was. It didn't really feel like that. So to me, it didn't make sense to be like, oh, we could die tomorrow, or you have a terminal illness, which is you could die tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think even in those scenarios, with dialogue that isn't as direct and on the nose as saying like, oh, and I love you, oh, love you too, it could have maybe been dealt with more of a let's talk. Someone, like, maybe she says something to Picard about like how much she's always respected and admired him, and he's like, you should stop smoking the snake leaf. I love interacting with comments. Tim hates it, but I like it.
But yeah, good thoughts. Was there anything else about that sort of? Oh, and then sort of throughout this discussion, the one that Soji's having with Picard, Picard keeps going. Why are we talking about this? Are you considering killing all life in the galaxy to save?
Hmm.
Like, even if we accept the premise that androids have personhood and deserve life, what's the ethical argument that we can kill all life in the galaxy to save this one planet? Like, which is again, similar things have happened tons of times in Star Trek. There's an interesting Deep Space Nine
Yeah.
episode where they find a utopian planet that's actually like a time loop, descendants of the crew of the Defiant, 200-300 years later, and they've got to decide whether to kill all of their descendants by saving themselves now, or letting this disaster happen where the ship crashes, half of them die, and then they create this sort of village. Like, that was an interesting take on that type of cost benefit analysis of letting these people die to save other people. But I'm just not
Right.
convinced. It's versus so many similar questions we've seen in Star Trek episodes. It seems weaker.
Oh, yes. Soji.
Yep. So next scene. Next scene is between Sutra and Narek, and so we already know Sutra's evil because she's aggressive in the evil way, and she's basically like, "I hate you, but I want to kill you, but I'm gonna let you live because I've got evil plans." And how would you like to get out of here? And so do you want to cut? Because there's the next scene. Do you want to talk about the whole story,
Um,
or do you want to talk about that
let us.
interplay first?
Oh, maybe a little bit. I mean, I guess she reminds me the way she's acting, and you've mentioned this before, but she's acting a lot like acted
Narissa,
towards Narek as well.
and exactly like
Yeah,
Bejazzle
Narissa.
back towards 7 of 9.
Yeah, so I definitely there does seem to be a theme here of like when someone wants to control someone else or make them do something, they kind of like get really close to them and almost kiss them and touch them weird or choke them or
Well, female characters at least, which all the villains have been.
so yeah, so she's kind of like I think you covered it well, but she wanted to kill him, she didn't because she has a use for him. So
Yeah, she's got a
then,
nefarious
of course,
plan,
yeah.
which we'll talk about it when it comes up, but is exactly like the other plans we've seen. So, next scene, Arcana gets stabbed in the eye with her brooch, and Soong's like, "Oh, that really sucks. She's dead." and there's a scene of Narek running off into the distance, which is evidently towards the Borg cube, which is pretty close, or I don't know. But he's going to the Borg cube, which is presumably interesting. But the problem is, so, and then there's a sort of moment with all the androids gather around with the killing of Arcana. She still has the hummingbird brooch over her eye. Now, should we talk about like the brooch? First of all, another someone being stabbed in the face or the eye, which you talked about, I think last episode, we've seen over and over and over again. Another situation where any sort of eye injury is clearly immediately a mortal injury,
Yeah,
fatal wound.
wound.
Like that wouldn't even kill a human, let alone an android.
That's yeah, Brent Spiner. I keep forgetting his.
Dr. Olton and to go soon, but you can probably just call him soon.
He seems really concerned with her eye too. He's like, "Oh, your beautiful eye, your beautiful eye." I don't know if
They have a backup.
maybe she isn't dead. Like maybe she isn't dead and she just is out of mission.
Well, I sort of assumed
But
that,
also,
but no, I think the implication of this scene is that is that she's dead.
Yeah. And so just a quick comment that we were kind of mentioning all the female characters being kind of like this seducing,
Sexually
but
aggressive.
Narek, yeah, aggressive, and Narek also seduced Soji in a controlling way. So
Yeah, but to me there was a very different dynamic than what we've seen from Bejazzled, Narissa, and Sutra, like the way that they've worked. That is the relationship between Narek and Soji.
he did seduce her, for sure.
Yeah.
But it was in a different way. I mean, he seduced kind of in a. He was more empathetic and caring, it seemed, versus kind of.
Well, he was lying. He was
Aggressive.
pretending to be like the type of relationship boyfriend that she'd want. He was kind of being someone who he wasn't. He wasn't just
Well, I think that's
being
the point. He
there
was
wasn't
using,
really like a seduction or actual fake relationship going on, at least that we know of with the other examples. That was just how they were acting. I don't think seduction is a good word for sort of Bejazzled and Narissa and Sutra.
anyway.
Although, again,
So,
to me, it's still ambiguous whether Seven of Nine had a relationship with Bejazzled. I'm
right, but that's not really important in this case. If I think we're talking more about Sutra and Narek. So yes, you're referring to like all the female characters and kind of not all, but like all of the ones who kind of took this approach. And I think if you're comparing that way, there's at least been that element with Narek as well, and what he did with Soji. Of course, it was a lie, but he was using that to control her.
yeah,
I
it
don't
definitely
know.
was. There was definitely themes of a controlling boyfriend. Like he was trying to, in a way, she was a character who sort of didn't really have her own past, didn't have her own identity, and he was trying to sort of manipulate that and created himself to his own ends, which was learning about some moons.
Yeah. Steve also said, "I'm willing to believe Narek and the evil twin android know enough about them if it didn't look lethal." So they just know that like the left eye or whatever eye it was with a brooch is the deadly blow that it takes. It's the Achilles heel of all synths.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. At least Sutra would know how to kill a synth. It just was, to me, comedically similar to what happened to Icheb.
Right. Yeah, it did seem similar. Okay, so what?
Oh, this is the next set. This is the next set. So after the death of Arcana, Sutra uses this to do a big speech about basically, this is what happens, this is what the Romulans are coming to do, not just one of us, to all of us, we gotta go fight back. So it's her pitch to call the AI, the highly evolved people, to come kill all life. And
yeah, so this was like false flag
again
attack on sense. So she basically used Eric to say, look, if you want to run free, just kill this android so that all the other androids can freak out, so that I have a reason to incite basically a war on humanoids. And so this is what the next scene is. That's what she's trying to do. She's saying, yeah, we're in trouble. We're in danger. The only solution is that we call upon this overriding, this AI god.
Yeah, we don't know what to call it. Beyond time and space. A highly evolved AI.
Right.
But, yeah.
So then, I guess we kind of, I don't know this next, but this is when we get our...
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so the next scene is Picard sort of does a counter pitch saying, I'll protect you. I'll go back to the Federation and I'll convince them. I'll demand that they end the ban. That's his pitch.
Right. And he's like, and you can trust me. I will fight for you and I won't let anything bad happen. Like, it certainly wasn't in line with other Picard speeches, because he didn't really have a good plan or a good way to convince them other than like, just trust me, everything will be fine.
Oh, it was a horrible speech.
Um,
It wasn't convincing at all. We've been sort of waiting for like the big speech that's going to work, and it wasn't it. And why do they even care about the ban? The ban doesn't affect them there. They're worried about Romulan's attack. Why is Picard like, I'll demand the Federation in the ban? What's the pitch there?
yeah.
It makes sense for Picard's perspective because that's what he wants to do. He wants to end the ban, and that sort of would prove that would be his retribution. And Soong sort of makes that point after his sort of like Soong does like sort of a criticism of his speech, but yeah, it just wasn't that convincing.
No, it wasn't, and I mean, it clearly wasn't because it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't change anything in the episode. He didn't change the direction of anyone's thoughts, because even in the end, he says, sorry, it's Sutra, I think, that says to Soji, you know, do you think we should move forward with this? Or something to that extent where Soji kind of has the final say in it.
Well, that was
or at
one,
least
so the next scene, basically, here, we'll get through that. Oh, I keep going the wrong image. Basically, Soong responds and says that, you know, that's not good, but what we just said, and he's on the side of Sutra and the synths calling the AI, and then they're like, arrest Picard, and that's when Picard's like, but Soji, and Soji's like, yeah, arrest him. I don't really understand this. Why are they arresting Picard? What does that solve? What's Picard going to do if he's not contained?
They basically said if he's still allowed to just speak freely, he's the fear is he might convince some of the synths to
take a ship
not
and leave?
call this. Well, no, but even just to not call this protector force. Like, he might convince them because he's so dang diplomatic, you know, that he might be like, good reason, don't do it. And then, like, maybe 3 out of the, like, 50 synths that live there or 100 synths will change their mind. And I don't know. I think the word he's going to overthrow. No, but you just asked why.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying you don't make sense. I'm saying, yeah, the plot point doesn't make sense. Other than they just need him to be, you know, trapped.
Yeah, and the comment here, Alexandra, mentioning that the mention of banning, you know, the ban and him and Picard fighting for that was kind of an extrapolation of the discrimination against synthetic life, kind of like a symbolic act. So like him saying, I'll go to bat for you guys.
Right. No, that makes sense. But
so
at the same time, though, they're not experiencing discrimination on this planet. They're completely out of contact with the Federation. They're experiencing discrimination from Narek, presumably, though they aren't. He's just a guy who crashed on the planet, and then they heard about Narek from Soji, so they don't like him. But Soji's experienced discrimination.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. Like, I don't know. I guess in this moment, what would have been the speech that Picard could have made to change their minds? What could he have said here? And
it should have been a speech about ethics, about the cost of life, and how you can't use all of life in the galaxy as a means to your own ends, for your own survival. You're trying to just choose to kill a bunch of people to save yourself.
He can't make that speech yet, though.
Yeah.
He's going to make that speech later, probably.
Yeah, hopefully.
Anyway, I get that. What's Steve? Or he could find out that the other android killed the lady. Who could find that out?
I assume the other androids. If the other androids found out how it really went down with Narek, they wouldn't be on. That's
true. Yeah.
Although, don't they know Sutra? Sutra's been like hanging out with. Like, they should know who she is and how she's super evil. Anyway, let's go to the next scene because this is almost done. Because there's another sort of point where they're like, arrest Agnes too, and then she's like, don't arrest me. And she's like, hey, I can help Soong create this android that he told me about 20 minutes ago that he can download his brain into. And I also really like androids because I like the androids again now. And then Soong like sticks up for her.
Yeah, which is definitely gone through quite a few different arcs, and not all seem to make sense as far as people trusting her and her being someone that should be in a position of power. Or like, I feel like she'd be a person you'd want to arrest before you'd arrest Picard, based on her past. But
Well, I mean, they're setting up
yeah.
for her to work with Soong to do something or to try to do something. They just don't have much time.
Oh, that's a good. Steve just said he means they might want to lock Picard up because find out or could find out that
Right.
that it was the end. Yeah. So that
Yeah, and
could
from
be.
Sutra's perspective in general, he's a challenge to Sutra's
He's a threat.
authority right now because Sutra is sort of saying, "I'm the leader. I'm
Yeah.
I'm like the Pericles of this little Peloponnesian War," but I mean, we're almost there. I think I want to talk a little bit about that. I think we're basically at the end of the episode, so I just want to
Sure.
maybe cut to the end of the scene. So he sticks up for Agnes and says, "Don't arrest her," and they agree, but they do arrest Picard, and she's evil. And in the last scene of the episode, we see Commodore O, and the Romulan ship is at a high warp and almost there, and they're getting ready to attack. So that's the end of the episode.
They say 24 hours away.
Which still seems like a ways, but
Yeah.
so I'll finish the thought that I sort of just started. Basically, I'm a little disappointed that the way they're just playing the androids is that I think the point they're making is that the androids are just like us. They're just like Americans. They use false flags of murdering people to start wars, and they're willing to kill like all the others. And if they're being persecuted, they'll persecute the persecutors, and they'll be willing to kill all life to save themselves because all life was being mean to them. And which is, I think, what they're getting to is that, hey, the synths, given their own personhood, act just like humans do, just like humanoids do. But to me, that's not really, or that's not how I was sort of hoping that we would portray what an android society was like. To me, it would have been more interesting if the android society was actually all like Data. Like they were maybe childlike, but also kind of like ethically perfect like Data. And they had this sort of ethically enlightened father figure. And then those types of people were posed with these sort of moral questions. And it's much more interesting for me for those types of characters to sort of deal with these moral questions and then sort of take seriously what does it mean for life. And maybe then it would be even more troubling or more interesting and more dark if that type of character sort of considered what would it be like. Maybe there is value in killing all humanoid life in the galaxy so that another type of life, from their perspective, the next sort of level of life can happen. Kind of like, like our Earth has had all these different styles of there's the Ediacarian biota, and then there's the Cambrian explosion, and then there's like the dinosaurs, and then there's the time of mammals and stuff like that. We've had all these sort of cycles of life where humans would have never evolved to be what we are if the dinosaurs weren't destroyed by a disaster, and the Cambrian explosion wouldn't have been, and before that. So there's all been these cycles. There has to be mass extinction for another sort of life to evolve and go forward and exist. And from their perspective, that would be a rational approach because they're the next sort of step of evolution. They're the next sort of cycle of evolution. And which is, I think, just an example of one sort of ethical way where an enlightened Data-like culture could actually say, maybe that is what we should be doing. But instead, the way they actually did go about it, making it this sort of just like the false flag thing where they're trying to trick them into, like it didn't, I didn't find that interesting. I found it a disappointment. What do you think?
Well, comment here. Alexander said, I would argue that most androids on the planet are rather gullible, childlike, and thus even more vulnerable. And actually, Steve just said, because I said, yeah, though, is like the one who isn't, and she's kind of figuring stuff out and is a little more aware. Steve said that at least makes sense. We sort of believe that Data learned from his interactions with the Enterprise crew. Early on, he was very naive and easy to lead, just seemed too cliche. Then Alexander said Sutra is very aware. And lots of comments coming in. So I wonder if they'll explore how Soong or Maddox went about creating their personalities. Yeah, it definitely seems like Sutra stands out amongst these. But that's very Star Trek too, though. There would always be like one character, one alien that was like less trusting, interested in trying to lead everyone.
Actually, what would have been maybe a much more interesting thing, and I don't think they did this, because they had Sutra acting the same way before she did the mind meld. But if Sutra's character actually completely changed after the mind meld, and that's when she started acting this way, started acting just like Narissa and wanting to do this war, that might have been more interesting, because she's gone through the admonition, right?
Yeah, that would be interesting.
But they did not do that, I don't think. I mean, I think they made it clear she was acting the same way before, and they didn't do anything that made it clear that her character changed.
Do you think maybe she was affected a little bit by her twin being killed by the Federation?
I think that's the implication.
Yeah. So that maybe made her a little more cynical and...
Yeah. And Beautiful Flower. I mean,
yeah, we still don't
believe that she was friends with him too.
Sure. And where's his twin? Because his twin's probably still there. Yeah, I think it's oversimplified right now. I'm thinking, though, I think Soji kind of said, yeah, lock up Picard. I think Soji, they're trying to lead us down a road. Oh, no, Soji has turned or believes in this destroying all humans. Like, I don't think that's happening at all. I think Soji is eventually going to have to, she's going to be a bit of a crux of what's happening here, because she is synth, but she also, I think,
has passion,
has empathy. Compassion, has empathy. Picard has learned to kind of get to know him.
Remember her discussions with Hugh, where Hugh was like, the way you talk to these ex-Borg, you have empathy, you actually connect with life.
Yeah, so I think we talked about this in one of our early videos about Soji and how it would be interesting to see the decision or the humanity put on a synth. Like the decision that has to be made, that's a very human decision. I mean, I guess, though, in this case, Sutra is also acting very human, but just a different side of humanity, which is kind of fear and ignorance leading to
survive, making decisions to survive. Which, remember, the discussion between Picard and Soji early in the episode, that's sort of what Soji sort of tucks on. Maybe there isn't any ethics. Maybe there's just killing to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think that's what the writers are trying to do. They're trying to say, hey, look at these androids. They're acting just like us. Thus, they are human in a way.
Right. And you kind of mentioned so some of the androids appear to be a little innocent, to be, followers. It might also be because in this case we can't really get to know all their.
We've only had two talk,
Steven's
right?
Talking about
Arcadia, which I think is the name of the one with the brooch that was killed, and Sutra. I don't think a single other one has talked ever in the episode. Did they?
No, but I think that's just because we don't have the time to get to know every android on the planet.
We didn't have the time for the scenes we had, really.
Yeah, Stephen mentioned copy-paste personalities. I think they probably all do have individual personalities. I think
they have to. If they're just copy-paste personalities and they don't have personhood and individuality in the way that I think the point is, which is a good point. They really, right now, they're all super one-dimensional. Even Sutra and Arcadia, they were super one-dimensional. They really need to develop these androids to be characters, actual individuals.
Yeah, but again, I think part of why they're one-dimensional at this point is because they've only had maybe a collective 30 minutes of screen time or 20 minutes of screen time. But, they're certainly trying to say, like, this one's evil, these ones listen, this one's not sure. I think that's fair. Like, they're all dealing with this the way that maybe a person would deal with this. But I guess maybe what you miss and what you're saying you kind of miss about a Data like Android is that innocence, at least and that programmed morality, because Data still had free will. We talked about this in another video where we were saying, was Data just programmed to be good? And that kind of takes away from Data's character. He wasn't really programmed to be good. He did kind of have emotions.
He had emergent personhood, but what goes on with that is sort of the emergent realization that he had a duty to other people. He had part of being a person is that you have all these people around you, and that has some fundamental relationship where you need to help them. And he was willing to sacrifice himself. He wouldn't be like, kill all life just to save me. He'd be like, I will sacrifice myself to save all life.
But again, and Alexander made this point too, is a concept again of like Data lore. Soji and Dodge, we don't know, like, was one of them evil? I don't know. We didn't seem like it. But if maybe Sutra's the evil one and Jana was the good one. It doesn't really seem like that's what's going on here, and I don't think that's necessarily. But I'm just saying that certainly happened with Data and lore. So you're kind of talking about Data, and like he made these decisions to protect life, and he certainly would never wipe out an entire civilization. Lore would have. Lore definitely would have. So if Sutra is a little bit more like the lore character,
but remember the way she was acting, like with Narek, she was like, "I'd like to just kill you, Narek, for fun, but I got an evil plan that's more important right now." It wasn't.
But didn't Lore say something like that?
Yeah, Lore was like that too. They were evil. He was hurting people and sending the crystalline entity to kill a bunch of people just for the fun of it. But that's the problem. And to me, that's not interesting. What would have been a more interesting take on the characters would have been to actually say, these are ethically good people, yeah, naive and childlike, but also Data-like in their ethics. They actually have an argument for why they'd want to do this. Mm-hmm. And that would be more horrifying, more interesting, much more interesting villains. Right now, Sutra's just a regular Gargamel.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll see. I know what you're saying, though. It's nice to have dimension to characters where they, they're not just bad. They're not just plot devices. Even if we did have more of a motivation, maybe that'd be nice. So maybe if we did hear Sutra saying, Mayana didn't deserve to die and humans are unredeemable.
Yeah. But even that to me would be like eye for eye rationalization. A more interesting thing, and like I said, if they could come up with, hey, it actually makes sense to make an extinction level event in the galaxy because the next level of evolution is us. Like, from our perspective, that actually is the right thing to do.
Well, maybe someone's thinking that. It would still sound evil for humanoids. Like, wait, you want to kill all of us?
Well, it would sound, humans existing like now would sound evil for the dinosaurs.
Yeah, that's interesting too. And I said this before, so Stephen just commented, and then we'll finish up here in a second, but I said this before too, which is kind of starts looking like the Romulans are the good guys. So, like, morally speaking, a little bit ambiguous who the good guys and who the bad guys are. Even though we do seem to
Commodore
have...
O looked really evil, though.
I was just going to say that. I was going to say we have people like Commodore O, Larissa...
Nerissa?
Narissa, why am I forgetting her name? Sutra, who definitely just seemed like the archetype, like, evil character. But really, the Romulans, their motivation kind of makes sense. Just reading comment again. They'll just stop the one.
I mean, in an abstract way, it makes sense to stop the androids from communicating with the killing all of us. It makes a lot of sense. But they're an evil fleet that's coming to destroy kill a bunch of people too. So,
isn't that what just happened in one of the Avengers? Is it the Avengers? Thanos, and he just was like, "I'm going to snap my fingers and kill like 70% of all life or something."
In the galaxy. Yeah, that's just like it. And he has. It's different in the comic
He was a big
book,
bad.
So that's something I could talk about for a while.
Well, let's not get into that. No, I don't.
But basically, he does ethically rationalize it, like.
Right,
we need extinction level events sometimes. And that's a classic supervillain thing to talk about, the dinosaurs and the Cambrian explosion and that, sometimes you need a bunch of people to die for some good thing to happen,
Better.
presumably.
Well, that's what you're saying, like an evolution
Yeah.
thing. Like maybe if they just were like, well, we need all humans to die, all humanoid life to die, so we can evolve. Isn't that a good reason? I mean, yeah, maybe it is, but it still sounds pretty terrible to those who have to die, and the Avengers would still fight against it.
And Data would
So
fight
I guess what I'm
against
saying, are the Romulans the Avengers? In this case, it kind of seems like it, and the android life. But see, that's where I think, again, Soji will be the Kraken. She's going to be the one that has to bring together both sides and say, yeah, I'm synth, but I don't think it's, I mean, I could be completely wrong here, but I feel like she's going to be the one that has to say,
changes her mind.
all humans don't deserve to die.
Well, yeah, presumably that's what's going to happen next episode. Very similar to Descent Part 2, when Data has to sort of deal with torturing Geordi and eventually freeze everyone, right? Remember? It's a very similar setup.
That's true. Well, it's made here is that the individuals in charge on all sides are evil. While the populace suffers the consecrate synthetics or organics. So either side, the leaders are evil. Maybe that makes more sense anyway. There is really no.
Yeah,
like
I mean that's something we've seen that a lot in Star Trek before, where they say there's two sides and there's war, and war is not good for either side. Really, war is destructive for both, and yeah,
and that extremes on either side, the evil people who are just like, this needs to happen absolutely with no question. That seems like those are the dangerous people. Those are the evil ones.
Well, yeah, like people with ideology. But again, they have the same setup. They both do this black flag type thing, and
yeah. So I was like, what's consecrate? But yeah, so I think that makes sense. There's a lot we could debate. We could, and I think the thing is, I'm in, what is this called? Like self-quarantine, basically. I'm like, we can
social
just talk
isolation.
about this.
We're not quarantined.
Speak for yourself. But yeah, I don't really want to end the video because like this is giving me something to do. So
yeah, and there's a good chance half of our audio didn't work anyway, so it doesn't matter. But I think we've gotten to the end of what we want to say about the episode. I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was like slightly disappointing for different reasons. Again, I think it's just there's a lot. I'm going to go back to, I think they bit off more than they can chew. And I know that you were saying, well, typically sci-fi, like a lot of these things are addressed and done well. And I think that's true. So it's not necessarily that this is too much for a show like this to tackle.
Or too weird. A lot of this stuff is stuff we've seen before. And like I said, I've compared it with Dune. Some other people have compared it to Mass Effect, have some similar themes. Of course, Mass Effect was influenced by Dune. They're common tropes.
Yeah, no, it's these are all, AI, like evolution, the idea of good and evil, and so I don't think that's the problem. But when I say they bit off more than they can chew, I just think that they, for whatever reason, when they had these ideas, they just didn't flesh them out enough, and now it's kind of, and I'm going to come back to, it's the first season. Hopefully they learn from this season. Hopefully that any changes, hopefully they listen to the fans and they listen to the comments, because often it seems like with these franchises, fans.
Yeah. I think we're going to have to talk more about this later on, but I feel like all the criticisms I initially heard of Star Trek Picard were 100% wrong. The problems are at least like the complete opposite. We heard a criticism that it was too political. It's not political. We heard it was going to be too woke. It's not woke. We heard Patrick Stewart's involvement was too much and he was going to hurt it. That seems ridiculous. The problems are to do with some aspects with the writing and stuff. We'll talk more about that. But I'm worried that voice, the early criticisms of the Picard show, is going to sort of overpower the real criticism of the show, and then people will just reject the criticism. You know what I mean? Yeah,
and I think Steven said seems like it's oversimplified. I think they oversimplify it because they took on such a complicated plot that in order to tell the story in 10 episodes, because you mentioned that too, and they're not really 10 long episodes, they really had to kind of dumb it down. So maybe what they can for season 2, hopefully they will simplify the plot, so then maybe the episodes can be a little more.
And it's not even. I don't mind. Yeah, and there's 2 more things I want to talk about, and then 2 more points I want to make.
Sure.
First, just in general, the show started out being a lot more cyberpunky, like a cyberpunk neo-noir. There was a lot of those sort of tropes. Space Vegas, the part where they were sort of investigating what happened to Dodge and things like that. And the way the world they were portraying initially was very cyberpunk. I think that came up a couple times when we were talking. But that isn't how it's felt lately. And then particularly this episode actually felt a lot like, if you just look at the scenes and the way it was done, any episode of Star Trek, any classic original series or TNG or Voyager or Deep Space Nine episode where they go to a planet. We've been to planets like this many times. So it actually looked and felt more like a Star Trek episode.
Yeah, that's true.
And I was going to say the other sort of thing that the dynamic we're actually dealing with at this moment, the climax, is not what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be more of like the ethical questions we sort of touched on, but instead it's just more of a simple, the Romulans are coming. Do we
a big battle?
Have a big battle? Are we going to press the nuclear bomb button to fight back?
Yeah. Well, I'm still hoping that in the last episode, character arc for Soji, character arc for Picard. I hope that Picard still makes a speech that has to do more with the ethics, that Soji then becomes the turning point for synths and humanoids. I really isn't just a big fight where whatever side wins just wins, and then it's like, and then the reason. Okay, here's the thing. This is what I hope. I hope that the Shred doesn't press the button, as you said. I hope that the reason she doesn't isn't just because they like defeat her, they like shoot her. I hope the reason she doesn't press the button is because she is again convinced or understands the ethics, so that it's not just about, no, she was irredeemable, just like a lot of the evil characters in this show, and she just would have, if she hadn't been stopped, she would have killed all life.
That's a great point.
So we stopped the evil. So I really, really hope that in the final episode, that is not our solution. Is not just she's taken out and everyone celebrates. It's like Star Wars and the Empire, right? Versus like in Star Trek, it's always looking at the ideals and looking at the ethics and looking at how should a person act in this situation, and then it's we as an audience, we learn from that. So yeah,
I 100% agree with that. That's a great point. And
yeah, that's my hope for this. Yeah, we got 1 episode to go. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, we're almost there.
Crazy. I'm going to be sad when it's over. I have been looking forward every Thursday. Now, I think for us, we're going to continue doing content, correct?
Hopefully. Some sort of content. I feel like there's a bunch of just on Picard alone of content we could create. A lot of things to talk about, and very soon there's going to be more Star Trek that's new too.
True. Yeah. So we'll talk about that. We can maybe look at TNG is definitely my favorite series still. So maybe we can talk about those episodes. I'll do some re-edits. Do something fun. What are you saying, Steve? I feel like the button is how they will have a different villain than the Romulans in season 2. Yeah. But if the super synths are defeatable and not actually a threat to our existence, it cheapens it. You think? I don't think
the super synths, the highly evolved AI, is actually going to come. Because to me, that poses more problems. Unless they do come, and it's actually like this surprising thing where like it is like this god figure that sort of faces down and like looks at Sutra and judges Sutra, and is like, you're not actually evolved, and flips it and starts killing them,
Well, and I
or
would
just
also
like it
love to
is
see.
like beyond somehow, or like Sutra. Everyone who experiences the admonition doesn't experience it within their own framework. And from Sutra's perspective, she wanted to fight back, so she interpreted it as calling this retribution that's going to kill all life. The Romulans wanted a religion that would give them a reason to hate another thing, and then create a super secret Romulan society, which is what all Romulans want to do. So that's what they interpreted it, and a bunch of them die so that they can interpret it, the strong ones, as being survivors. Maybe
Mhm.
maybe that's what it is. Maybe it comes and it says it's really just a reflection of yourself. I'm not actually here to kill everybody. I'm just here to to learn about you, like Nagalom.
I mean, I think with an other, we talked about like alien life that is other. It could be a really cool way to introduce this new life form. And I think it would be cool, like as you mentioned, maybe they do show up, maybe they do, like they judge Sutra or whatever, but maybe also Picard talks to them and does his diplomatic magic and convinces this, this new life form or whatever it is that,
The value of life.
yeah, like I mean, he's dealt with Q before. Q was basically like powerful enough to wipe out all life, and that was kind of situations in TNG was Q saying, "Does humanity deserve to live?" And then Picard convinced him, or I guess he just kind of like Picard, and they had a fun little relationship.
Mm.
But
No,
ultimately, I think Picard,
I really hope something like that happens in the last episode. Something big, something interesting, something that sort of, to me, feels like interesting core Star Trek problem to solve.
yeah, yeah, so it'd be cool if they didn't just end the season and throw it away and start new next season. I'd like to see them have something happen with this. Like this is too big to throw away. I think, right? Like this is too big. You can't build up. This is the Romulan. They have this new secret society, the Shot Vosh. We can't just eliminate that. We can't get rid of the new idea of synths and how they're advanced. And man, so I hope it's not like Lost. You know, the show Lost that they created. The first season was amazing. Second season was good. Third season was still pretty good. And it started and their long season arc ahead of time, and it ended up falling apart at the end. So I really hope that's not what's going on with this show. I hope the writers have planned like a 5-season arc, even if it doesn't get to that. I hope they know how they're going to use the Jot Vosh still in the future, how they're going to use the Borg, because now we have the ex-Borgs. Man, they've done a lot in season 1 of
I've
like.
never gotten the sense that they had a multiple season sort of plan for the show. To me, it was always like a Netflix style show with one season, one arc.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
I don't know
anyway,
what that means for where we're at right now, but
they'll have to tackle it somewhat in season 2. But anyway, I'm like some of the debate, like there's Stephen and Alexander talking about Star Trek, hardcore Star Trek fans and expectations and stuff. I certainly I do enjoy the show overall. So episodes I like better than other ones, and I hope season 2. I hope they continue the show, and I hope they have some new ideas for season 2. Yeah, Faith of the Heart. Not a fan of that song.
yeah. Well, we
I
talked
remember
about
when
that when we first in the first episode when we were first talking about the openings of stuff, the different shows. We talked about how that didn't age well.
No, but we liked of Picard. But
Yeah.
I remember just it didn't age well because I remember when Enterprise first came out and I hadn't seen it yet. You were like, "Here's the opening," and you showed it to me, and I was like, "What was that?" And you said, "No, I think it actually kind of makes sense for like what they're trying to do." And I was like, "Yeah, it kind of does," but yeah, it didn't age well, and it just didn't feel like sci-fi to be honest. It felt like
Whereas most of the other Star Trek opening themes are so timeless.
Yeah, for sure. So there you have it. I mean, I don't know if there's anything else. We could just keep talking, but I need to eat supper at some point.
Yeah, we've been a couple
too.
hours there. So that's our first Skype live. We'll see how well that worked.
I think we had some. Yeah, I'll watch it back technical issues. Looks like maybe when the photos were up, nobody could hear me at that time. Maybe that's for the best.
I see
maybe,
you because you see my screen, right? You see the sound levels when we're there. It seemed to be working. Maybe it was just quieter.
Yeah, something went wrong. We'll figure it out for the
I
future.
think when I talk, it cuts you out.
Maybe, but I think Stephen was saying it literally was when the photos were up, my volume went way down. So we'll see what happens.
We could master this. We could have like 3 people go, lots of people calling in. I don't know if my computer could handle that.
Settle down there, Tim. Yeah, I like all things.
Things are good.
I don't think that I haven't liked at least a little bit. Like Steve, who's talking on here, we watched Enterprise together, and I think part of it became the fun for us of kind of like making fun of things that were happening on the show. So maybe that's not the best reason to like a show, but looking back, it was fun.
Yeah,
I was glad.
Yeah, we've talked about that before.
Yeah. The conversation going back and forth between Steve and Alexandra TV,
Yeah.
That's his excuse.
Whose excuse?
None of your business.
Fair enough. All right.
Well, what is it? Is it Thursday?
Yeah,
I don't even know.
It's always Thursday.
Well, okay. Yeah, hopefully everyone's staying not getting too stressed about the situation, staying safe. It's a good time to learn, read a book, create a Skype
podcast
web show. So we'll keep watching, and we look forward to the season finale next week, and we're gonna have a big surprise for everyone. Right, Tim?
We'll find out what I put in that box.
Watched our very first episode on YouTube. Go back and check it out if you didn't. And put in the box. Go check it out, and you'll know what we're talking about. Maybe we'll find out next week.
I don't think we will.
Make sure we do. Okay, well, thanks for watching. As always, I hope we kept you engaged. Some tea. We enjoyed some talk. Some time.
See you later.
Go on.
Gee, Albert.
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, everyone's like bored too, right? Here, take